Hallo allemaal and welcome to this week's episode of TulipTV. I just returned from 2 weeks in Holland and I was thinking about all the differences that I noticed from living here in Vancouver and being in Holland. First of all, I couldn't believe how cheap groceries were. But then when you go out for dinner or want to buy clothes, it's a lot more expensive than here. The other thing that I noticed was that you really could feel the recession in Holland. It was such a difference from being here. Many storefronts were closed or taped up, and everybody was talking about it. So when you're thinking here in Vancouver or out in British Columbia, Alberta, or anywhere here in Canada that we have it tough, I think it's a lot tougher still in Holland. Here's what's coming up next on TulipTV.
This program is sponsored by Dutch, the full-color English language magazine about the Netherlands and its people, at home and abroad. Canada to Leave is the online community for the Dutch living in Canada and the Canadians living in the Netherlands. Canada to Leave, wherever you live.
Hi there, we're talking to Edina and Nicola, and Edina and Nicola are both students here in Canadian schools, and I went to school in Holland, so we're going to see if there's any comparison, how that compares. So first I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourselves.
I'm Edina and I'm 14 years old. I'm in grade 9 at Penn High Secondary.
Penn High Secondary, and where's that?
It's in Penticton, BC.
Okay, and what about you?
I'm Nicola, I'm 12 years old, and I'm in grade 7 at KVR Middle.
So you go to middle school and you go to a high school. Now what's the difference between the middle school and high school?
Well, middle school is basically grade 6 to 8, and then high school is 9 to 12.
So you just moved over to high school?
Yeah, I'm not too happy I like the school, but I can see some improvements.
Okay,
yeah.
So what subjects do you take? Does everyone get the same subjects, or do you get choices? What about you, Nikki?
Well, basically at KVR, the mandatory classes would be the regulars like French, math, English, history, science, stuff like that. And then you get a choice between you could take the art and drama course or you could take band. And then you also have to do 3 other mandatory ones. That's computers, home ec, and tech ed.
Okay, and what about you, Eddie? Do you get a choice?
Well, just like Nikki, you have the mandatory courses like math and socials and stuff. But then Penn High has a huge variety of different classes like woodwork and metalwork, and I'm in the drama, film, and TV program, and that's the one that I have. So that's like filming, editing, stuff like that.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. When I went to school, I only basically got the choice of math and chemistry and physics and then some languages. No choices of woodwork and all those kinds of things. So you're doing drama, and film, and TV. And what was the other exploratory class you were doing?
Because I'm in the French immersion program, I only get the one. So
what's French immersion?
French immersion is, we're in the late immersion program, so it starts in grade 6, and so you basically do all of your courses, even gym and stuff, in French.
In French?
Yeah.
So not in English?
Nope.
But you are both Dutch, right?
Yeah.
So do you speak Dutch?
Yeah, we do.
And French?
Yeah, and English.
And English. Wow, that's amazing. So every class you take is in French, like you learn math in French?
Well, we don't have electives or exploratories, whatever you want to call them. We don't have those in French because there's a French track and an English track at my school. So we got those mixed in with the English kids.
And what about other languages? Do you learn other languages?
Not really, no.
At Penn High, they have German and Spanish too.
Okay, because when I went to school in Holland, I learned German and French and English as foreign languages, and then Dutch as well. And we had the choice of Spanish and Russian where I went to school. And my wife, she went to what's called in Dutch a gymnasium. In English, you'd say gymnasium, I suppose. And she got Latin and Greek, ancient Latin and Greek. So those aren't choices you have?
No, well, for us, because there aren't as many surrounding countries, right? It's basically just America. So then it's basically just English and French mostly.
Okay, what do you learn a lot about Europe at school?
No, it's just, like, that's one of the things that I'm not so fond of. In my socials class, we only learn about Canada and the history of Canada. And I have asked my teacher, could we maybe study Europe a bit more? But he says that you're in Canada, so you have to learn about only Canada, but I personally don't agree with him on that.
So you don't go into sort of the history of Greece, ancient Greece, Athens and Sparta, and the basics of democracy and humanities and
They do that a little bit, in my grade later on in the year, they'll do a little bit of ancient Greece and stuff, but definitely not a lot.
Okay, because that was our basis of our history course, right? You start at the beginning with Egypt and Greece and Rome, and then you go through the Middle Ages, and then you go to the big, discovery of America and all that. So that's not something you've covered?
Not yet, at least.
And what about geography? Do you do geography of the whole world or just Canada?
Well, mostly just Canada, just provinces and capitals and stuff, but yeah.
And when you move on to high school, does that change?
We also we go a little bit more detailed into Canada's geography, and we did a tiny little bit, just one or two things on the States, but very, very little.
Okay. Economics, you do any economics? No, apparently not. Well, that was the hardest subject I had to do at school. So that was slightly different. Okay, so gym class. What I always get when I look at television, coming from Europe, especially American television, is how important sports and gym are at high school here. Do you find the same in Canada?
Yes, there's all the basketball courses and volleyball and stuff, and that's really the priority of the school. That's very important to them, and they do all kinds of competitions and stuff. Grade 9 and 10, it's mandatory to take gym, but 11 and 12 it isn't. But they even have a weightlifting room and everything at my school. It's crazy.
And you take part in any organized sports outside of school?
Well, we do dance classes. Both of us were really serious in dance, but not really any team sports.
And is that organized through the school, the dance classes?
No, it's separate.
But you can do sports through school after school hours, right? Extracurricular, I think that's called?
Well, there's just the team sports like volleyball and basketball, but we go to a dance school, and it's for people who really do want to pursue a professional career in dance.
Okay, that's wonderful. Well, thanks for talking to us about that, guys. And it's really interesting to see how the differences are between different countries in their educational systems. So thank you so much.
This program is sponsored by Dutch, the full-color English language magazine about the Netherlands and its people, at home and abroad.
So what is so different in life between Vancouver and living in Rotterdam?
Well, if you could see with your own eyes, but there's a lot of people here on a small country, so it's very busy, it's very crowded, quite a bit of traffic to get to work, although I'm lucky I don't live too much away from my office, but yeah, it's more hectic here. The quality of life, you don't have I miss the mountains from Vancouver for sure, but as you will see a little bit later, we go to work near the ocean, so it's pretty cool there as well, but yeah, it is very, very different. I've been here many times, obviously, when I lived in Vancouver, but being back here and living here, it takes a while to get used again to the Dutch lifestyle. Yeah, I'm weird in a car driving to the Maasvlakte, which is the larger part of the port. The first parts were built in the 50s, 60s, and lately they added a huge amount of land, building one of the most impressive ports in the world, I think. And as you know, currently I'm working for that port, so we're driving towards the Maasvlakte, as we call it, and hope to let you show what the Dutch people are building over there. Okay, so first we will drive to one of the container terminals that's opened 2 years ago, and I actually started working on it almost a decade ago, and you'll see firsthand, pretty close by, the full automated terminal. And then we go back and I'll show you the enormous addition that the Dutch just added to this already big port. And there you'll see the 2 terminals that are being built right now and are planned to open in 2014. So what we're looking at, that's actually the Euromax terminal. I helped creating the IT blueprint 10 years ago, and this terminal is almost completely robotized. There are still people on the cranes, but the cranes you see in the front who pick up and store the containers in the yard, they're all robotized. And on the water side there are so-called automated guided vehicles that bring the containers to and from the ship, and yeah, that's all automated. And to give you an example, for a terminal of this size in Vancouver, you would definitely see hundreds and hundreds of people moving those containers at the port. The new terminals that are currently being built, they will have big gantry cranes with actually drivers, quote unquote, in the office. They're able to control a few cranes, so there are no more people even on the cranes itself, and there's nobody on the ground. Well, the dikes are very strong because, you know, it's one of the things we do very well, and half of the country is reclaimed land. But just to give an example, where I live, if there would be no dikes, my house would be completely gone and probably 3 or 4 meters underwater. So the floor of my house is so much below the water level that you actually don't think about it. But without the dikes, yeah, my house would be gone. It's amazing how much land we reclaimed from the ocean by just building a couple of good dikes. So here we're at the new part of the port, and if I would have taken you here 3 years ago, you would have seen just ocean, just water. But it's pretty amazing after only that amount of time how much sand has been dredged up, and you're looking at a part of the new port. Yeah, so this picture actually shows the enormous amount of land that has been reclaimed, as well as the huge dike that has now been built to protect the new port. And then in front of here you see the 2 terminals that are being developed. Yeah, so here we are at the other side of the big dike. So here they created really nice beaches, as you can see, and it's all ocean. Well, I think many years ago Vancouver created with Deltaport a similar kind of port environment as we have in Rotterdam. Now with the expansion of the port, Also, Rotterdam went through a long process for getting environmental approvals. I know the Port Authority of Vancouver has plans to expand Delta Port, maybe get another terminal over there. But looking at Richmond, I've walked that dike a few times. It's obviously a dangerous area when it comes to earthquakes and tsunamis, possibly. But it looks to me that some Dutch knowledge to increase the dikes in Richmond may be necessary in the future, especially with the sea level rising. But sure, something like this can be done to protect Richmond as well. There's a lot of similarities between a port like Vancouver and Rotterdam from a Port Authority perspective. They're both forward-thinking. I do believe maybe that in Rotterdam they're a little bit more aggressive in things getting done. There's been a lot of talks to expand Delta Port, but it takes a long time. And Rotterdam is making the investment now, although the economy is not that great. But for sure, with all the investments they've done in terms of creating land, creating a lot of distribution centers, so the big container ships will come to Rotterdam. That's forward thinking that I think should be able to do people do in Vancouver as well. I know there are thoughts to create big distribution centers around Delta Port, and if they're successful in doing that, then it will attract more business and it will be good for the economy, not only for BC but the whole of Canada, because after all it is the Pacific gateway to Canada.
This program is sponsored by Dutch, the full-color English language magazine about the Netherlands and its people, at home and abroad. Canada to Leave is the online community for the Dutch living in Canada and the Canadians living in the Netherlands. Canada to Leave, wherever you live.
Hi, I'm John Irving, Director of Engineering for the City of Richmond in BC, Canada. We're a community of about 200,000 people, 190,000 or so in the Greater Vancouver region. I'm responsible for the long-range planning, design and construction of the majority of our civil and facility infrastructure, which includes roads, drainage, sanitary systems, and our diking system. We are an island in the Fraser River Delta, and we are or have a significant level of flood threat from both freshets and storm surge and sea level rise. Although we are largely above sea level on the island, we do have a diking system and a drainage and pump station system, which provides protection for the city when we see those events, freshets from the river and the high water levels. The system we have in place today has largely been built over the last 50 years and is certainly adequate for meeting the risks and the threats that we see today, but we do have a very long-term vision going out beyond 100 years now to look at the effects of climate change and sea level rise. In that regard, we have developed in the last 5 or 10 years a flood management strategy which defines these risks and defines the asset that we're trying to protect, which is obviously the built community that we have here in Richmond. We've identified now specific areas where we want to look at how we would achieve the flood protection measures going forward, and right now we're just in the process of executing a dike master plan for the Steveston area. Steveston is a historic fishing village that exists in the southwestern corner of Richmond and is now developed into a very vibrant, multicultural and residential community. It is a little more challenging for us because the existing dike and flood protection infrastructure there is very hardwired with the built environment. So we've hired Delcan DHV. This is a partnered Canadian and Dutch company. They have done some previous work for us on our master planning and strategic flood protection development. They're doing this piece of work for us now, where we're looking at specifically the Steveston Harbour area and the adjacent areas on the West Dyke, and looking for solutions in terms of how we would start building that flood protection infrastructure, specifically the dikes and the pump stations, in a manner that would address our needs going out 50, 100 years and beyond. There's some really significant options that arise out of that. Historically, again, relative to the Dutch experience, our flood protection infrastructure here is quite small. We already have dikes that are in the order of 1, 2, 3 meters high relative to the surrounding land. Not terribly significant impact there to the functioning of that surrounding land with regards to development or other community uses. When we start looking at meeting the demands going out in the long term, you start looking at more of the Dutch example, where you have very significantly sized dikes of an order of magnitude greater, and other things like sea gates and sea locks and things like that. So we're certainly leveraging the experience, the Dutch experience, through things like the previous workshop we had, and of course engaging consultants like DHV. Certainly looking at Holland, there's areas where they're starting to use or doing less land reclamation and looking at having more of a porous boundary with flood protection. And that's something we want to try and achieve here. We have sturgeon banks going out several kilometers into the strait from our West Dyke. And we're starting to recognize that as much as that's a very strong environmental asset for the city, it's also providing us a lot of protection from wave run-up and storm surge. So that's something in the long term that we would perhaps want to identify specifically in that regard as having a flood protection benefit, which it hasn't had to date.
The dikes are mainly built for flood protection, but not for gaining further land for to extend a harbor or something like that. What we know from Holland, for example. Obviously, space is not a problem here as we have in Europe.
We are facing a bit more of a space crunch in the context of the North American or Canadian experience. Vancouver has the border, the mountains, the river. We have the ALR. So in terms of the available land for residential, industrial, commercial development, we are limited. Certainly in Richmond, we've seen ourselves max out. It's not certainly quite the European experience, but there's really no virgin land left in Richmond. The development we see now with regard, which is mostly residential, but certainly a lot of commercial development in the downtown area, is all redevelopment. People are buying single-family homes or older industrial land and turning that into higher density residential and commercial.
Now, the protection against flooding, did it come from? Was it some? What kind of decision was it? I mean, did something actually happen in the past that where we decided, okay, let's do something here?
Yeah, there's in the past, the more recent significant event was 1948. We had a very large flood in the Fraser River, and prior to that, there was a significantly lower level of flood protection in Richmond and in other places up and down the Fraser Valley. And that experience certainly triggered an awful lot of provincial funding, and it was a result of that experience that got most of the dikes and flood protection infrastructure to the level it's at now. Most of the dikes were built shortly after that period, and most of the pump stations that support that infrastructure were built through the 60s and 70s. We're just getting into a replacement process with that infrastructure right now.
Would that mean that we could have some sort of an event happening as we had in New Orleans?
No, we're a completely different situation in New Orleans. Large parts of New Orleans are significantly below sea level, and there's no part of Richmond that is actually below the mean tide level. If we didn't have any dikes at all, you would see some minor flooding at a very high tide level, and of course that would recede as the tide went out. So effectively, we're kind of in a high tidal zone. Most of Richmond's at about 1 meter geodetic elevation, which is a meter above the average mean tide level.
This program is sponsored by Dutch, the full-color English language magazine about the Netherlands and its people, at home and abroad.
Well, that wraps it up for this week on TulipTV. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you enjoy our show, we rely solely on supporters and donations from viewers like you. So if you like us, please go to our website and click on Donate. On behalf of everyone here at TulipTV, we'd like to thank you for watching, and we'll hope you watch again next week. Have a good week, and tot ziens!